A bat and the ball costs $110 total. The bat costs $100 more than the ball. How much does the ball cost? If you said $10, that's exactly what your brain wanted you to say. And it's wrong. The correct answer is $5. This isn't a math problem. This is a test of how you think, not how smart you are, kind of psychology test. And you just experienced the reason why some people feel naturally smart and others don't.
Your brain has two systems: fast thinking, which is quick, automatic, and emotional; slow thinking, which is logical, effortful, and accurate. This idea comes from psychologist Daniel Kahneman. He called them System 1 and System 2. System 1 is your default. It's always on. It helps you read emotions instantly, react without thinking, make split-second decisions. Without it, you couldn't function. But there is a problem. System 1 doesn't care about being correct. It cares about being fast and effortless. So instead of analyzing deeply, it uses shortcuts called cognitive biases. These are mental hacks your brain uses to save energy. For example, you believe information that confirms what you already think. You judge people based on first impressions.
Nah, you can judge that one.
You jump to conclusions with incomplete data. But there's another problem as well. System 1 doesn't just give answers. It makes those answers feel right. That's why you were confident about the bat and ball question. But those who are smart understand this. So they build one simple habit. They don't trust the feeling, they question it. They pause and ask, is this actually true? That pause activates System 2, and System 2 is different. It's slower, it requires effort, but it does one thing better than anything else. It finds truth. People who engage System 2 more often make better decisions, avoid logical errors, and perform better in complex thinking tasks. So, now you know the difference isn't intelligence, it's control. Think twice before you trust yourself.
But you can't just ask System 2 to help out. You have to force it. Basically,
your brain works like a muscle and operates on the principle, use it or lose it. You have to train your brain to be smarter. And how would you do that? Have a growth mindset, believing that your intelligence can be developed through effort and strategy. And once you believe it, start working on that mindset.
I know half of you just skipped this like it's a YouTube ad. Growth mindset? Yeah, whatever. But funny thing is, this boring concept is exactly why some people get better and others just get better excuses. Always remember, your intention reflects your actions.
once you've accepted that your brain is a piece of wet clay that you get to mold, suddenly the reading, the sleep, and the mind games don't feel like chores. They feel like upgrades. So now that we've stopped pouting and fixed our attitudes, let's get back to that recipe for becoming naturally smart.
One of the best ways you can effectively train your brain is to challenge it. Regularly play games that require logic and strategy, such as Sudoku, crossword puzzles, chess, or word games to boost mental agility. Learn a new skill completely from scratch. When your brain gets introduced to something new, it physically changes by growing new synapses and dendrites. Learning a new language puts this into action very effectively, forcing the brain to handle complex grammatical rules and sounds, which improves cognitive flexibility, attention span, and verbal reasoning. Use Feynman Technique. Have you heard this before? Whom am I even asking? Feynman Technique is a 4-step mental model designed to help you learn a concept deeply by identifying gaps in your understanding. It basically means if you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it well enough. 1. Choose a concept and write it down. Take a blank sheet of paper and write the name of the concept you want to learn at the top. This acts as your anchor, whether it's how a battery works, the law of supply and demand, or the theory of relativity, but be very specific. 2. Explain it to a toddler, or maybe a 12-year-old, or to someone who has no background in the subject. Use simple language. Avoid jargon or technical buzzwords. Be concise. If your explanation is rambling, you haven't grasped the core essence yet. 3. Identify your knowledge gaps. This is the most critical stage. As you try to explain the topic simply, you will inevitably hit a wall where you can't find the right word, so your logic becomes fuzzy. That's your gotcha moment. These friction points are exactly where your understanding is weak. Go back to the source. Re-study the original material specifically to find the answers to those why and how questions. 4. Review, simplify, and use analogies. Now that you've patched the holes in your knowledge, refine your explanation. Create analogies. Relate the complex idea to something common. For example, electricity flowing through a wire is like water flowing through a garden hose.
When you follow these steps, you're officially the person who can explain quantum mechanics to a golden retriever. Congratulations on that. But if mind games are the sprints. We need to talk about the marathon. It's something much more old school, but way more powerful. Let's talk about reading. Most people think reading is just consuming words, but neurologically speaking, it's more like a hardware upgrade. When you read, you aren't just memorizing facts, you're engaging in phonological coding. Science shows that deep reading increases the integrity of the white matter in your brain. Basically, reading turns your brain from a series of disconnected dirt paths into a high-speed fiber optic network. Reading literary fiction activates the theory of mind. It makes you less of a jerk because you've technically already lived through 1,000 different social disasters. It's like VR, but for your soul.
Now it's time to actually test your hardware. There is a massive difference between knowledge and skill. Knowledge is knowing that a tomato is a fruit. Skill is knowing not to put it in a fruit salad. And the only way to get that skill is to get your hands dirty. Let's understand the learning by doing rule. When you just watch or read, you're using your declarative memory. But when you physically do the task, you trigger procedural memory and creates engram, a physical trace in your brain tissue. Your brain actually learns more from the mistake than the success. When you mess up, your brain sends a massive alert signal that makes the subsequent learning stick like super glue. You don't need to spend 10 years in an apprenticeship to master this. You just need to follow the 70-20-10 model. 70% of your growth should come from experiences, 20% from social interaction, and only 10% from your formal education. The moment you learn a new concept, like a coding trick or a cooking technique, you have about a 20-minute window of prime plasticity. If you do it once in that window, you've increased your retention by roughly 400%. Information is better remembered if it is generated from your own mind rather than simply read. When you build the birdhouse yourself, you generate the solution to why the roof is crooked. When you write the code yourself, you generate the fix for the bug. That aha moment locks the information into your long-term storage.
We've covered the heavy lifting, but your brain needs a pit crew to stay in the race. Let's speedrun the final 3 essentials before you quit the video. Sleep. While you're dreaming about marrying the love of your life, your brain's glymphatic system is literally pressure washing metabolic waste out of your skull. It's like the save game button for everything you learned today. No sleep, no save. Exercise. You don't need to be a bodybuilder, but you do need to move. Cardio triggers the release of BDNF. Scientists literally call this miracle growth for the brain. It encourages the growth of new neurons in the hippocampus. Basically, a 20-minute jog is the difference between a barren desert brain and a lush intellectual rainforest. Hang out with smart people. If you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. Hang out with people who talk about ideas. Brain has mirror neurons that mimic the thinking patterns, vocabulary, and intellectual hunger of those around you.
So choose your friends wisely.
Whew. Well, that's it. Yeah, quite a long video, huh? If you loved it, don't forget to like and subscribe. I'll see you soon.